Now, I'm excited to welcome Phoebe Thermitus to join our class. Phoebe graduated from Rutgers University with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and Mathematics, and then moved on to receive a Master's of Science in Management, and then went to UNC Kenan-Flagler, where she received her MBA in 2019 as part of the Executive MBA cohort. She started her career over 25 years ago at IBM, and after IBM moved to Lenovo, where she spent almost 9 years. She founded her own leadership consulting company and currently works as a vice president at Fidelity Investments. So Phoebe, I just gave a very high-level overview of a 25-year career. So can you tell me a little bit more about your professional journey?
So after I finished my undergrad in math and computer science, I joined a Fortune 500 company as a software engineer. I've always had this passion for leadership, and within a little over 5 years, I jumped right into a management role. I love leading teams. I love leading people. I really do enjoy leadership. And so here we are 25 years since then, and I've had a lot of that of leading teams and projects or a combination of both. During my career across just 3 companies, I've had the privilege of doing product support as well as leading teams in software development, product operations, and digital transformation. And because of my passion in leadership, in addition to my corporate job, I've also focused on doing training and getting certified as a trainer and speaker in leadership development.
Great. So I'm curious then, over your 25-year career, what caused you to become interested in understanding who you are and understanding yourself better?
Such a good question. As I think about that, I don't know if there's been one thing. It's been just this journey of, as I learn more about me, knowing what works, what doesn't work, that makes me more interested to learn more about me and what works and what doesn't work. By default, I love process, I love efficiency. And so subconsciously, the more I discover about my own value, about my own ways of working, the better I'm able to work, i.e., efficiency. And maybe there's some underlying process that fueled that. And over the years, and even more recently, in the last 5 years or so, I've dug deeper of being able to really understand the effectiveness of recognizing, like when you think about personality, these different personality assessments, but knowing how teams can work better as a result of understanding, once again, what works, what doesn't work. I'll even say I do that personally and professionally. So even in my home, I kind of know what works with my husband, what doesn't work, and so that really does help from an effective communication perspective. But all of those has really fueled that, and I've also used that to when I struggled with why is this taking longer than I want it to be? Why is this more frustrating? Because of understanding how I think, how I operate, how let me change that, how I prefer to think, how I prefer to operate, because it's not a limitation, it's more of a preference. It has helped me just hone in on those things a little bit better.
That's great. And so it sounds like there's a very practical nature of why you've learned more about yourself and you've experienced some of the rewards, some of the positives associated with that. And I'm curious, as you look back on your career, what tools and practices have you found most helpful in cultivating self-awareness?
I will start by saying I am partial to DISC. When I think about that as a tool, I first got exposed to it probably fairly early in my career, about 20 years ago. And it was one of those things when I did it then, I put it on the shelf, did some other assessments, and I've picked it back up. And that was one of the things of just even personally these last 5 years of getting deeper. But that is a tool, but I also see that tool being comparable to many of the other ones that are out there. And it's interesting enough, on my whiteboard in my office here, I have the words "put it all together." And on that board, I think about not only my disc profile, I think about my spiritual gifts, I think about my strength finders assessment, because all of those things coming together are things that have helped me see a common thread, a common theme in order to be able to dig further. I will tell you, I think about when I was even going through the MBA program and this leadership class, there are some of those where I started to see there is this theme that is consistent of helping me to be okay of knowing like this is how I show up and I'm okay with that.
Absolutely. And can you explain just a little bit more about DISC? It's something that we don't go into a whole lot of detail in the Executive MBA course, but I have heard from you and other executives that that could be a very valuable tool.
Happy to. I'm always happy to talk about DISC at a high level. So DISC, DISC, is a behavioral tool. At a high level, it divides people into two categories. One on, are you more reserved or more outgoing? And the other, are you more task oriented or people oriented? And if you think about just that mapping, there's the D and the I, the S and the C fall in a quadrant that kind of says, okay, somebody who is more outgoing and task oriented would be a D. Someone who's more outgoing and people oriented would be an I. Someone who's reserved and people oriented are leaning towards an S, and someone who's reserved and task oriented is leaning towards a C. That's a lot to say, but at a high level, you can easily ask somebody the question, are you more reserved or are you more outgoing? Are you more task oriented? Are you more people oriented? And that can help you kind of have conversations and frankly understand some of those frustrations around it. And so that's really high on level on what the DISC is. And I said that, but I want to be clear, we all are a combination of all styles. It's just a preferred way to operate. And I'm very intentional in preference because all of them are also leadership styles. And we are a combination of at sometimes 1 to 2 primary styles, but once again, they all exist. All of them are valuable on a team, and how we are aware and interact with one another is just, once again, helping someone lean into their strengths. Personally, I am a task-oriented reserved person, but I know I can't always stay task oriented. So recognizing, going back to my earlier comment on the pitfalls, is helpful of recognizing I can't stay here all the time. I need to be aware of it so that I can operate and be more effective for those around me.
So it sounds like you know yourself really well, and you mentioned that you're task oriented, but then sometimes you know that you have to be a little bit more people oriented when the situation calls for it. And so, how do you balance staying true to your authentic self while adapting to different professional environments or roles?
A lot of it is the self-awareness and also recognizing that everybody's not like me. And when I have that reality that says everyone is not like me, then it helps me become more conscious of what do other people prefer. And as a part of that, especially in a leadership role in a team environment, that is very key of how does that show up? I will tell you, just not only am I task oriented, but I thinking of going back to one of my other strengths from a strength finders, I like to maximize the individual and the whole. And so all of these things coming together, seeing the team, seeing the needs, stepping outside of my comfort zone and learning to become more and more comfortable with that, all contribute to staying true to who I am, as well as recognizing the environment around me. I am an extroverted introvert. I prefer to be, I'm more of an introvert. I do recognize some people call this the ambivert. I know where I get my energy from. And even when I go to these large conferences or large events, because I know who I am, it basically says I also know it's okay to step away, to recharge, and then come back. So when I am in these new environments, I recognize what I prefer to do. I know what frustrates me, and I am okay to say, give me a minute, let me step back, let me recharge and figure out what needs to happen.
A couple other topics that we've touched on in the class is values and also finding a purpose or a why behind what you do. And I'm curious, how each of these has played out in your career. Looking back at your 25 career, maybe it was, when you were younger, you didn't necessarily understand it as well as you do now, or maybe you did. And so I'm curious, from a values and a purpose perspective, how that's played out during your career.
When I think about what drives me and what gives me purpose, it's how do I help others? It's so interesting. Just last night, my sister shared with me something that I said in high school. She showed me an article from high school paper. And what I said 25 plus years ago to what I say now, which is we all have our gifts, we have our strengths, and how can we show up and use them? It looked different 25 plus years ago than what it does now. But there's this underlying thread that has stuck true to that. And so, from a values perspective, first I have to value me, but I also have to value others. And so, even though we may think different, we may approach things different, the valuing of other people is an important part to maintaining a good team environment. It's an important part from a leadership perspective. It's an important part when we disagree. And so, as a leader, have I always valued everyone through every situation over 25 years? No. Have I strived where I can say more often than not? Yes. And then when I find myself in an environment that over those 25 years, I've had what some may call a toxic work environment. I've had where people around me weren't valuing. For the time that I stayed there, my reality or my light bulb moment was it is more important for me to maintain my light than allow the darkness around me to cloud me. And then I also worked to get into a new environment. So it was one where maintaining when I started to feel uncomfortable because I wasn't showing up the way that I feel that I should be showing up holistically, it was time for a change. And when I was being fueled, I was excited, I was there, I was growing, I was flourishing. And as a leader, as a manager, as a mentor, even as peers, I want to help other people feel that way, to recognize their uniqueness, own their uniqueness, and feel like they're being valued. And that helps me show up regardless of where I am, corporate environment, social environment, volunteering is valuing others so that they feel valued in order so that we as a team, we as a collective unit can work together for something even bigger than who we are.
I love your light and dark analogy in terms of, and I could totally relate during times where I felt amazing and I felt maybe in a state of flow and I'm growing, to times where I haven't felt that way. And I'm curious, you have a leadership consulting company now, and you have your 25 years of professional experience. And so how do you encourage that light in others? And maybe more specifically, how do you encourage that self-awareness in others? Maybe there are people that you've worked with that you don't feel like have been particularly self-aware. How do you encourage that in others?
As you can imagine, sometimes it's easier than others. It's I have found, so I have two scenarios that comes to mind from your question. There's the peers or the leadership pure work environment, and then there's those that I've mentored, managed, and coached. So I'm going to answer that through both lenses. For those who are peers or even the leadership team, and including the example I gave on sometimes people around you don't value others, it's still staying true to who I am. And what I have seen over time is if somebody is heightened, especially negative, and then someone else goes with them toe for toe, it stays at that level. It stays in a very negative environment. But if I maintain who I am, even when that environment changes and the people around me change, at some point in time, things level out. I had a leader tell me, especially after I did a disc workshop for him, he's like, that's why you were able to maintain who you were in this environment when things got crazy, because he was able to see how I showed up and appreciated it more as a result of the discussion that we were having. Maybe not in the moment, but in through that hindsight. And then when it comes down to people that I mentor, that I manage, that I coach, it's appreciating who they are. I have a quote that I tend to keep. I have it on my vision board, I have it on my phone, and it essentially says that you were uniquely made to be exactly who you are. Always remember that there can never be another you. And that's the conversation I want to have with those that I mentor, because once again, we're not meant to be the same. Your team is not meant to be the same. Your team needs you. And just by having that reality that that different way of thinking or different way of approaching something doesn't have to be wrong, it's just different. And continuing to foster that is one of those things that I try to do in those relationships, because that has helped me. And by being transparent with things that have helped me, including some of the pitfalls that I might have fell in and came out, I truly believe it helps them to know that it's not all perfect, it's not all rosy. There are some struggles and there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not an oncoming train. Like they just can put that, themselves into a positive perspective and really be able to own who they are and be okay with that.
Great. And speaking about light at the end of the tunnel, there's a classroom of executive MBA students who are working full time. They are in the middle of classes right now. They're balancing family life. They're juggling so many things. I'm curious, as you've looked back over the past 5+ years at and had a chance to think about the value of your MBA, what value did the Kenan-Flagler MBA give you?
I really did enjoy my experience with Kenan. It's hard to believe being one of those students you just described, because in the moment, the weight of what you were dealing with in the moment felt like it was all that there is. As I look back on it, it's like, oh, that was just a very small period of time in the grand scope of everything else. What I truly enjoyed about that experience through going through the MBA was the network, was the variety of different people who all came together from their experiences, what they were going through, and how we were able to work together, learn from one another. And we continue to do that now. 5 years later, I'm looking forward to our 5th year reunion, because we stay connected and, people are learning from one another. And so the network is a big part of it, but it's not just the social aspect of the network. There were the business relationships that came out of that network. Going through some of the things that you're teaching in this class on understanding yourself and your leadership style, and just having that appreciation of, once again, people are different. I remember the team that I was on, we had a cohort and we had different styles. And as you can imagine, on my team of 6, one of us were on both ends of the spectrum. Wherever I was, there was someone else who was on the other end. But we worked together in order to accomplish the goal. We might have approached it differently, but we had a very good teaming mindset. So that just reinforced what I'm seeing in the corporate world is you're going to be on a team of people, and people are going to be different. And that's okay. But how can you apply your uniqueness to come together for a common goal? So that experience in that environment, safe, comfortable growth environment, was a really good way of just seeing the world around. And the last thing for me was knowing that this was like, I will say this was a personal thing for me, but it was, I deserve this. As I went through the classes and the network, the teachers, the other peers in the class, it helped me to want more. It helped me to seek more. Internally, the company I was with at the time, as well as externally, but it made me hope and see things through a different lens. As we were having business discussions, I was able to, like, oh, I remember this, or even just the thinking approaches that happen as a result of going through the class. So a combination of the people, the classes, as well as just the experience and the practice that we got through the program are pieces that I'm so happy to have gone through the overall experience.
That's so great to hear. And our final question here is building on that. What advice would you have for current executive MBA students, maybe from a building self-awareness perspective, but then also feel free to hit on just general advice as you think about where you were while you were in their shoes?
First, I'm going to say enjoy the experience, because it is a point in time in your life where you're going to be learning some things, you're going to be connecting with people, but enjoy the entire experience. Focus on the network, because going back to self-awareness, you do have to understand who you are, but you're in an environment of people who are coming from different backgrounds, different companies, different, maybe even parts of the world. There's so much diversity that's going to be there. And so being able to understand and tap into your network, because of, at least for me, the best way to understand yourself is to put yourself into situations to do how you're going to operate, how you're going to interact, how you're going to deal with conflict, how you're going to deal with people who are supporting you. And so this entire MBA experience is just a mini grounds with being able to do that with others. And so there's the opportunity of take what you're learning in your leadership classes, in your assessments that you're going through, see how that applies, but see how it applies right where you are from the experience. And the final piece of advice, and this is just one that I live by, never stop learning. Never stop learning. And of course, that is the academic things that you're going through, but never stop learning about yourself. Because as I mentioned, you're going to be in different environments, different situations, and until you're tested, you may not know how you're going to apply. Take every experience as an opportunity to learn, not to beat yourself up. When you win, celebrate. When you fail, figure out what you learned from it, because a failure is only a failure if you let it stop you. But if you're on this journey of constant learning and growth, if things don't go well, you just have one more opportunity to learn something.
Phoebe, it's been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for joining the class.
Thank you. And good luck to everyone.